If you're a car enthusiast, there's a good chance you've heard of the BMW B58 engine. This engine is quite renowned because it has been in cars like the BMW 340i, the M340i, the M240i, and most notably, the new Toyota A90 Supra or the Mark V Supra. Very, very important car because of its legacy and legendary status as a Japanese tuning beast. Now, as we all know, the Toyota Supra and many of these other BMW inline-six cars are powered by the BMW B58 engine. This motor is an absolute powerhouse when it comes to the aftermarket world, tuning, basic bolt-ons, upgrading fueling, turbos, etc. This engine can produce immense amounts of power. So, what's the hype with the BMW B58? Why is it able to produce such high power figures with such relatively simple bolt-on mods? We're going to be breaking that down for today's video, so if you guys could smash that thumbs up button as well as subscribe to the channel down below, I would really appreciate your support. Let's get right into it. Behind me is my personal car. Many of my subscribers know it's a 2015 BMW M235i, and it is powered by the N55 single turbo inline-six engine. Now, I'm sure many of you are thinking, why is this even in the background? Because it doesn't really have anything to do with the B58, but the N55 is the predecessor to BMW's B58. Not that it shares a whole lot in common, but this was the engine that came before the B58, and because of it, I'm going to be drawing a couple comparisons as I go throughout my talking points. Which brings me into my first point, and that is the structural design of the B58 motor itself. The B58 is a closed deck, meaning that the cylinder walls in this engine are completely reinforced. Now, what this enables the engine block of the B58 to do is sustain very high power figures, high engine pressures, and lots of stress without breaking as many other motors would, and on top of that, being durable over a long period of time. A closed deck motor is extremely important when it comes to building a strong engine design, and that structural integrity to have within your engine block is significant. The N55 and N54 engines that BMW had produced prior to the B58 are actually open deck designs. And while they can still produce immense amounts of power reliably and consistently, when you really start to push high power past like 700-800 horsepower and up, you'll start to notice that you can run into many reliability issues, and you are really going to begin sacrificing the reliability of the motor on these cars. B58, it doesn't seem like you're going to be doing that so much. Number 2 on the list comes in with the BMW B58's air-to-liquid intercooling system. Unlike the N55 and N54 engines, which use a traditional air-to-air intercooler setup that have a physical intercooler mounted at the lower end of the front bumper, the B58 uses an air-to-liquid design that is actually integrated within the intake plenum or the intake manifold of the motor. This is a pretty complex design because it is literally all one piece, but what this allows it to do is increase efficiency immensely. With an air-to-liquid intercooler setup, you really aren't compromising a whole lot in terms of heat soaking because the consistency of having that coolant flow really helps to cool down the incoming air charge. And on top of that, you are also shortening the path of the turbocharged air. So after it exits the turbo, it heads straight into the intake manifold where it is also cooled at the same time and then thrown into the engine, and it reduces that travel. Now, an air-to-liquid intercooler setup isn't perfect on the B58, and specifically early on when this was only in the BMW engines, tuners were running into some intercooler limitations with the air-to-liquid setup. And additionally, there can be some fueling limitations with this, which I will go into in a little bit. When I was at SEMA, there were a lot of guys running port injection setups on their B58 Supras, and what they actually did was they took out the air-to-liquid intercooler setup and they reverted back to a traditional air-to-air intercooler to enable port injection. I'm going to talk about this in just a little bit, but this actually brings me into my next point, which is the turbo of the B58. Now, with the turbocharger of the B58, it is larger than in engines such as the N54 and the N55. You have the turbine as well as the compressor wheel that are larger in diameter, and overall, if I remember correctly, this equates to about a 20% boost efficiency and boost increase with the turbo. Another notable thing to mention about the turbo is the fact that it only has 2 exhaust ports, and the actual turbo manifold is not required with the B58 turbo because it is actually integrated within the cylinder head of the B58. Now, what's really cool about this is it enables the turbo to be bolted directly to the cylinder head itself, and it makes it really easy to take it off and to upgrade it or swap it, etc., etc. This also aids in efficiency as well. Of course, the turbo is also a twin scroll, so it is really efficient at delivering smooth linear power while eliminating turbo lag as best as it can. And this aids in a really punchy yet linear feeling power band. And the fourth and final reason that enables the B58 to produce really high power levels is its fuel system. Back when the B58 was first introduced in cars like the 340i and the M240i, fueling was actually the biggest issue to producing power on the B58 because the DME hadn't been cracked. A lot of shops and enthusiasts were running piggyback flashes that didn't reflash the car's DME, and because of this they were running into a lot of limitations within the OEM software on the car's DME. Now that the B58 DME has been unlocked or cracked essentially, tuners can really take advantage of the fuel system's stock capabilities, which are actually pretty competent. For the most part, people can run a blend of ethanol on the high pressure fuel pump with this car, anywhere between E30 to E60. And I know earlier this year, the tuners over at Boot Mode were testing full E85 on the stock high pressure fuel pump. Whether that is something that is going to be durable in the long run is something we have yet to see, because I don't think there are a whole lot of people that are doing that right now. And if anybody is running full E85 on a B58, it's most likely with a port injection setup. However, there is a company called XDI that is working on a replacement high pressure fuel pump that enables you to essentially run full E85 without any issues. And they have done this on the N55 as well as the S55 to allow those cars to produce really high power numbers. The cool thing about running E85 through the high pressure fuel pump and the direct injection system rather than a port injection setup is that there is no external fuel controller that you have to be monitoring. All this can be programmed within the car's DME, and while it does take more work and tuners are working on this steadily, in the future I think we're going to see some really cool solutions to where you can run full E85 on a B58 with a relatively simple high pressure fuel pump upgrade. Fueling is extremely important as well. You can have all the great bolt-ons that you want, a great tune, but if you don't have the proper fueling to back that up, you really aren't going to be making those significant power gains like you would be with E85 and meth and etc, etc. That about does it for the 4 things that really make the B58 such an amazing engine. There are lots of really complex technical documents that you guys can read on this thing, and many other reasons that really enable it to be such a powerhouse of a motor. But I just wanted to break down some of the really cool key concepts of the B58 and just make it easy for other people to understand. As I stated earlier, if you could smash that thumbs up button as well as subscribe to the channel down below, I would really appreciate that. With all that being said, guys, I'll catch you all in the next one.